Welcome to another edition of the Voice of Palestine. It's August 3rd, 2014, and I'm your co-host, Hanna Kawas. This week we are interviewing Hassan Husseini about last week's sit-in at the NDP MP Paul Dewar's office in Ottawa. Hassan was part of the action and he will update us on what happened, and we will also talk about solidarity activities across the country and the traditional position of the other Canadian parties. Good afternoon to you, Hassan, and welcome to the Voice of Palestine.
Thank you, Hanna. Thank you for inviting me to speak to your audience about what we did and what we're planning to do in the future.
Yeah, you know, it's really difficult times for most people, especially who recognize the what's happened, the enormity of what's happening in Gaza and the war crimes that's been committed. You know, I mean, it's not just Palestinian Arabs, but all human beings all across the world are taking the streets and showing their solidarity and anger at what Israel is doing, which is heartening, really, because the support is really, especially from South America. I don't know. It's clear that what the countries in South America did, and Central America, because El Salvador was one of them, it really shows the international depth of the Palestinian cause, in contrast to the Arab regimes. But maybe we shouldn't get into that. It's a topic by itself. So could you tell us, how this here in the East, maybe in Eastern Canada, like for example here in Vancouver, we had 5 demonstrations and successful ones, although the reporting wasn't that great from the traditional media nor from the CBC. But could you tell us about your experience in the East, Ottawa,
right.
Toronto, and Montreal?
What I can tell you is that also in all of the 3 cities that you mentioned, Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal, there have been a number of pretty large demonstrations, as well as vigils, and those sometimes have taken place on the weekends, sometimes during the week, and the numbers of people that are coming out are certainly large and representative, and go well beyond the Arab or Palestinian communities, and they include other communities. But at the same time, of course, at least for Ottawa, the organizing of these demonstrations and protests have been done in coordination between a number of groups, Palestinian groups, the Students Against Israeli Apartheid, as well as independent Jewish voices, which are important in many respects. And as you said, it shows the depth of the solidarity movement with the cause of the Palestinian people. Those will continue. There will be also a number of demonstrations that are organized for next Saturday, the 8th. And I believe that those are right across the country, that there are going to be mass protests against the slaughter, really, the war crimes and the genocide that's being committed against the Palestinian people in Gaza. And I think that more and more people are seeing Israel for what it is, and they're starting to speak out. And that, as far as we're concerned, that was another reason why we wanted to organize not only the demonstrations and so on, but also to organize at the offices of MPs to express our anger at the positions that they're taking.
Before we get to that, maybe we should talk a little bit about the political situation. It's really disturbing for us as Canadians, in general, to see that there is not one single voice in any of the parties in general, the traditional parties, that really speaking out against, the war crimes that's been committed against the people of Palestine. How do you feel about that?
You know what, Hanna, it is beyond shameful as Canadians to see that our political elite in Canada, irrespective of which party they belong to, the NDP, the Liberals, the Conservatives for sure, but also the Greens, that of course they have one MP in Parliament. All those that have MPs in Parliament, the four parties, have taken positions that are shameful, but at the same time I would even go as far as to say, for most of them, we say silence is complicity. In some cases, they're more than silent. In some cases, they're actively supporting, endorsing, and facilitating, and providing a moral cover and whitewashing the crimes of apartheid and war crimes and genocide in Gaza, and that cuts across the political spectrum. We know that the Harper government is more Zionist than the most right-wing Zionist in Israel itself. Justin Trudeau has came out very clear and reiterated his position that I don't know if you've seen the video, that we've got Israel's back, and he made it very clear. And some of us, I'm a labor activist. And of course, the labor movement has a historical relationship with the New Democratic Party, and it is supposed to be a political party that has historically defended, at least paid lip service to international law, to human rights, and to international legality. And what we see right now is that even the NDP are taking positions that is complicit, and they're trying to strike a balance between victim and victimizer, between oppressed and oppressor, and that is very problematic for a lot of us who are supporters of the NDP. And voters of the NDP, and even members of the NDP are starting to speak out.
We used to have comfort with the words of Sven Robinson and Libby Davis, but Sven is out of the picture now, and Libby is being, according to her words, she been muffled. So, I mean, it's really clear that the establishment, especially, I really don't believe it's just Thomas Mulcair, because, I mean, he can't do it all by himself. So I really blame the establishment of the NDP. And just I want to read you a recent editorial from the Jewish Independent, which is the main Zionist paper here in Vancouver. And if you like to comment on it, just I am quoting now. More remarkable has been Thomas Mulcair's extraordinary success at turning his new Democratic Party from what was once a nest of Canada's most vocal anti-Israel zealots into a moderate party in line with the other two mainstream parties. He has done this in the face of a small but venomous clutch of extreme Israel haters. That's the end of the quote. So that's from a Zionist party. So obviously, and they had another editorial a few months ago where they said Thomas Mulcair got it, which is, got their message, So although he got their message before even, I know, his position before he became a leader, he was a strong supporter of Israel. But, again, it's you can't blame an individual. It's the establishment of the party. What do you think of why the NDP went to that direction, which is really, in essence, like you said, silence on war crimes is complicity in them?
That's right. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, when we point out that it is the establishment of the NDP that has led the party in a direction, that is correct, because we saw the beginnings of such a position that started to muzzle those who are critical of Israel, such as Libby Davis. That started even before Mulcair came on the scene. That was Jack Layton even. But during that Jack Layton, although there was a little bit of an attempt to muzzle voices that are critical of Israel and its apartheid-like policies and the continued occupation of Palestinians and the settlements and so on. It has accelerated after the election of Thomas Mulcair to the position of leader of the party. Leaders of parties in Canada have actually a lot more power, especially those who have parliamentary caucuses than in other perhaps systems of governance internationally. And so Mulcair has a lot of clout within the party, and especially over the caucus.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the muzzling of the caucus, it's a coalescing of Mulcair and people within the established political party. Right now, I can tell you that there are a lot of MPs in caucus, and of course a lot of NDP members who are very unhappy with the position that the NDP is taking.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of NDPers of conscience, a lot of NDPers who feel that their party has been taken away from them when it comes to a critical issue of international solidarity, of international human rights. And so they're starting to speak up. I don't know if you saw in Rabble a couple of days ago, there was an article by NDP youth who started actually asking questions about the fact that the party's position on the situation in Gaza is a departure from the historic position of the NDP. So those voices are there, and I think that when the Zionist media in Canada and others start to congratulate them for supporting Israel, then we know that the party is in trouble.
Yeah.
And we need to continue to work with those people in the party who are progressive and want to take a different position. And we need to continue to shame those who are in the party who are taking our votes for granted because they consider themselves to be a left political party that we have no other choice but to support. It is no longer given that progressives from all different communities right across the country will just willy-nilly give their support to the NDP just because they say they're progressive. Their policies, as far as what is happening in Gaza right now, is nothing short of complicit in war crimes and genocide. Okay, because the right of Israel to defend themselves has been translated into attacks on civilians, the killing of children indiscriminately, attacks on hospitals, on schools, on daycare centers, and even on ambulances that are coming to assist the injured.
Yeah, you know, Hassan, I really laugh when I hear Israel right to defend itself because, you know, it smacks of racism. They're saying, you know, Israel has a right to defend itself, but the Palestinians should be massacred, you know, basically, and they don't have a right to defend themselves, you know. It's really not just hypocrite, it's outrageous, really, to hear such nonsense. You know,
Absolutely.
I thought, you know, this is just, you know, and everybody's saying it, including the NDP, you know, Israel has a right to defend itself, as if the Palestinians are the occupying power, not the occupied, you know, which is ridiculous. I mean, they talk about Orwellian phrases, you know.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. The whole equation is, as far as they're concerned, is upside down, you know. But they're being challenged. All of them are being challenged. Certainly, Canada has gone quite far to the right, both government and opposition, and I am hopeful though, because there are a lot of voices that are speaking up and speaking out. And I can tell you, we occupied the office of Paul Dewar, because the vast majority of us actually who occupied the office live in his riding. Some of us were members of the party. Some of us are longtime supporters of the party. We vote for the party. I personally worked on his campaign. So we did the occupation also because he occupies a position within the party that has a great deal of influence. And this was just the beginning. As you know, there was also an occupation of Finn Donnelly's office in Coquitlam, Port Moody riding, in your neck of the woods. And I can tell you that there are plans to continue to meet, lobby, but also have direct action at the offices of NDP MPs and others. So expect that there will be a lot more over the next week. That are being organized across the country.
The same day there were 3 offices that they weren't occupied. They were visited by some people here in Vancouver. Libby Davis' office was visited. Joyce Murray from the Liberal Party also was visited by activists. And Wee Young, I think she's a conservative MP, was visited also the same day. Although it was noticeable, I don't know if you have the same experience, or maybe they learned from the occupation of Dewar's office. There were plainclothes RCMP who questioned everyone that went in and questioned them about their names and what they're doing and etc. They wanted information about every single one. Even we hear that Joyce Murray, which is a staunch Israeli supporter, wasn't happy with their role. That they questioned people. That did you have the same experience in Ottawa, or maybe it was a reaction to what happened to Paul Dewar's?
That's right. I did hear about what you just mentioned to me, but none of that happened with us in Ottawa.
Yeah, good.
We probably, maybe, I don't know. We'll see, because there will be other actions happening next week. Maybe because we took them by surprise. But the police were not aware of it. But none of that happened. In fact, the staff at Paul Dewar's office were very cordial and very open and sympathetic. And Paul ended up coming, and we had a discussion with him. Unfortunately, he tried to justify the position of the NDP. He talked about a lot of semantics. He said that their position is against the occupation and against settlements and so on. But all the statements that are coming out are not actually reiterating that position that supposedly the NDP has. All they're saying is that Israel has the right to defend itself, which means it can continue to kill Palestinian civilians, and that all the blame they're putting on Hamas and the other resistance movements for the breakup of the ceasefire or for the firing of the rockets. There is no recognition, and this is the problem, by the NDP as supposedly a progressive party, that we need to speak to the root causes of whatever violence is taking place. And the root causes are the occupation, the expansion of the illegal settlements. It is the apartheid policies that exist, and it's the denial of the right of the return of the Palestinian people to go back to their homes and lands. And of course, the blockade on Gaza and the question of the prisoners. Until they understand that these are the root causes that they need to deal with, and they turn a blind eye to them, then they are complicit in whatever Israel is doing. And by the way, the question of complicity is stated in the Convention on the Prevention of the Crime of Genocide. One of those conditions is knowing and being in a position of power and being complicit in what's happening. And I will accuse all 3 political parties in Canada and their leaders of being complicit in the crime of genocide against the Palestinian people right now in Gaza.
Although I mentioned the RCMP because this is it wasn't occupation here, what happened in the Vancouver area. It was really visiting people exercising their democratic right to go to their MP's offices, So such a thing should be really denounced, because they are enforcing, the Israeli agenda here, whether it's government policy or not. I mean, they're supposed to be protecting the citizens rather than harassing them and trying to intimidate them from visiting their MPs. And it should be denounced in the strongest terms that such an action shouldn't happen anywhere in the country, because people are exercising their democratic right, as I said. So,
absolutely, you're absolutely right, Hanna. We need to take notice of that, and that's almost criminalizing or intimidating people from even visiting your MP, which is your basic democratic right in a democratic society.
So, I was really disturbed when I hear that, because it's enough that the fools and the politicians in Ottawa are siding with the war crimes, but we have the enforcers to do it, to the the RCMP and the police. It's becoming like a police state, really. Reminds you of back home, doesn't it?
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
So, you said they're going to continue with those kind of protests at the offices of the MPs.
Yes.
There is something happening next week, you said. Do we need to announce them, or?
Well, there is, for those who are in Montreal. There will be a die-in at the office of the leader of the opposition and the leader of the NDP, Thomas Mulcair. I believe that is taking place Tuesday at around 12:45 at his office, which I don't have the address. As far as other locations are concerned, I can tell you that various people in a number of cities are meeting over the next couple of days to plan actions to take place over the next week. People should, however, follow us on Facebook as well as on Twitter. And the Twitter handle and the Facebook name is Voters 4 Gaza.
Voters.
So
Voters
number 4 Gaza.
Precisely.
So if they go there, it has become kind of a clearinghouse where it was, of course, started for the Ottawa action, but a lot of the activities that are happening across the country are being
posted there.
Either promoted or advertised or reported, even those who are doing it at the last minute and they need support. So we'll encourage your listeners to go there. And I would encourage your listeners, if there's nothing happening in their area, to organize a delegation to go meet with their MP or occupy their office or call them and ask them to speak up for international law and human rights and against the genocide that's taking place against the Palestinians.
It's worth noting. It's really amazing the supports we are getting, and these individual initiatives are popping up everywhere. Here in North Vancouver, there was some in New Westminster. 2-3 people without any organizational affiliation. They just doing their bit and saying enough is enough and stop the genocide and the war on Gaza, which is good. Although the media is playing a really negative role. What's your experience there? Because we had a bad experience here with CBC, and we complained to them. Even we took them to the CRTC, because when it comes to the 4 demonstrations, that was before the 5th, which was yesterday. 4 demonstrations, they hardly reported anything of the thousands that came out on the streets in Vancouver, while the Zionists had a demonstration with less than 100 people. They gave it 6 times the coverage. We counted that, so we complained officially. And yesterday they behaved better. They at least reported what's happening in the streets of Vancouver, and they promised to investigate our complaint, which is good. What's your experience in the East there, Ottawa and the other?
Well, you know what, we've had good decent coverage. It's always biased. It's always tilted towards giving the the mainstream story of the
Hamas versus Israel.
Hamas. But, I mean, it's all about Hamas and their firing of the rockets, and Hamas is a terrorist organization, essentially taking their cue from the Israel, not the Israel, because in Israel itself there's a lot more diversity in terms of viewpoints. If you read the Haaretz, you'll see that there's a lot more criticism than some of the stuff we see in our own media in North America and Canada right now. So that is quite disappointing. Needless to say, from our experience here, it's been a mixed bag. We've had some good coverage. We've had good coverage in the sense that they came out and they reported and so on. And we've had the likes of the Sun News and so on, that was pretty awful. What's interesting about an interview I did with Sun News Network is that, we know Sun News is not very kind to the NDP at all. In fact, they hate them. But on this particular issue, they came to the defense of the NDP. And so when the Sun News Network, which is the sister to Fox News in the United States, when the Sun News Network comes to defend Thomas Mulcair and the NDP, you know that the NDP have gone too far to the right. There's something wrong, and people need to take notice of that.
Also, I'd like to, remind our listeners when I hear this word that Hamas is in the terrorist list, I ask people who put it on the terrorist list, who put all the Palestinian resistance movement on the Canadian terrorist list. It wasn't a Canadian-made decision. It was made in Israel, and I said it many times, and we documented that on our website, Canada-Palestine Association website, because they included all the resistance movement and including Hezbollah. They put it on and this decision wasn't made locally. It was made in Israel, which is shameful for an independent country to take orders from outside forces.
You're absolutely correct, Hanna. This is the reality. And one thing also we need to recognize on the same stream of thought that you had is the fact that the right of people who are living under occupation to resist the occupation is paramount. And as far it is sacred. People have been living under occupation for over 6 decades right now in Palestine, and they have every right to defend their occupation, and they have every right to resist. How they resist, what means they use to resist, it is not up to me to determine. I am in solidarity with oppressed people, and that is their right to determine it, whether it would be through mass protest, whether it's through boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and whether it is through armed struggle. That's their own call to make. And my priority here and my role here is to support them and not second-guess them.
And
we may disagree with the tactics, of course, of this particular group or the other, but overall, we support the right of oppressed people to resist the occupation.
And the resistance is sacred, even under international law.
Correct.
So, I'd like to move a bit to if you can share with us how people can support practically the struggle. I mean, we had lots of voices that support us, but we want to try to move it into practical support. What do you suggest, Hassan?
Well, you know what? There are so many different things that can be done. We know right now one of the biggest things is mobilization on the ground in terms of vigils and rallies and demonstrations. And so people need to get involved in a big way to continue to be in the streets, expressing our anger at the atrocities being committed, but also at the positions that are being taken by our government and our political parties in Canada. They need to visit, write, email, fax their members of parliament and express to them in the strongest terms possible their opposition to the position that these political parties are taking, essentially in support of aggression and violation of human rights and war crimes. They can, of course, visit, as I said earlier. They can occupy, depending on the position they're in and at each city that they're in. And also, I think that we need to heed the call coming from Palestine for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. If they are members of a trade union, if they are members of a church, if they're a member of civil society organization, take a motion, a resolution forward in order to boycott, divest from Israel, and work with your colleagues to put these resolutions forward and to actually take concrete steps in order to boycott Israeli products in Canada. I mean, these are some of the things that we can do that are effective, and we need to continue to engage in them.
You are activist also in the trade union movement. Could you tell us how far did we come for this goal of BDS in the trade union?
Well, yeah. Look, I think we've come a very long way from a couple of decades ago when I became active in the labor movement, and even before the Canadian labor movement and the Histadrut, the Israeli trade union movement, had very, very close relationship. Where leaders and trade unions in Canada were very had fraternal so-called relationship with the Histadrut. The Histadrut does not even come anymore to any of the conventions of the labor movement in Canada. There has been some unions such as QP Ontario, the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, that have adopted resolutions in support of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign. There are locals, of course, at the local level that have adopted such resolutions. There is a lot of work that's being done by organizations such as Labor for Palestine in order to raise awareness. And I can tell you there is a change, and we have a lot of work to do, but there is a marked change and qualitative change in the support for the Palestinian cause within the labor movement in Canada. We're not there yet. I'm disappointed in some unions during this time that have not taken a clear position against the atrocities being committed, but we're working on them as well, in the same fashion as we're working on the NDP. But the difference is that within the trade movement, I believe we're moving forward as opposed to the NDP. They're moving backwards from their position. We're not completely there, but there's a lot of work that's being done.
And there is also signs within the churches after the Kairos Palestine declaration in support of the BDS movement, which is really important. It's small steps, but even according to activists in the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, they're saying what the BDS Palestine achieved is in short years is more than what they achieved in their 20 years of struggle in their campaign to boycott South African products, which is good, and that comes from their testimony. I'm not saying that, they're saying that. So that's good, and it's heartening really to see the support that's happening worldwide really, and because isolating Israel is a cornerstone to the struggle of the Palestinian people. As long as the U.S. keeps supporting and pumping money and weapons into Israel, Israel is not going to stop their aggression and their war crimes. What do you think?
It's. I think that is key. Absolutely, and we need to do exactly what the Palestinian Solidarity Movement, as the anti-apartheid movement, that is, as happened with the South African apartheid. And I do agree with the fact that, the accomplishments that are being made by BDS against Israeli apartheid is certainly ahead of where it was with the South African apartheid. But that also may speak to the fact that according to our South African comrades themselves who lived under the South African apartheid, is that the Israeli form of apartheid is even more vicious, more brutal than the one they lived under. So that, certainly could be a reason why it is it is gaining and making more of a change than their movement did.
Yeah, for sure there weren't F-16s and Apache helicopter and tanks bombing Soweto, while in Israel they are doing and demolishing whole neighborhoods on top of the heads of their civilian residents. So, yeah,
exactly.
You're right what you're saying. Yeah, it's worse. It's worse than
absolutely. Absolutely. So, but you know what? I mean, despite all the gloomy and the negative stuff that we see around, Israel is also lashing out because it is actually in much more of a trouble than.
I call it act of desperation, Hassan.
It is.
It is an act of desperation. Yeah.
You know that they've lost quite a bit internationally, and they are becoming more and more isolated. And since the 9/11, they've jumped on the bandwagon of fighting terrorism in a big way. The unfortunate reality is you have extreme right-wing parties and not so extreme right-wing parties, such as the Liberals and the NDP in Canada, who have drank their Kool-Aid, and they are whitewashing their crimes, right? But they're in trouble. They're in trouble because they've been isolated in the world, and they need to engage in desperate actions.
And look at the support we're getting from, South America and Central America. It's immense, really. I mean, most countries recalled their ambassadors from Israel.
Exactly.
And
even in the case of...
declared it a terrorist state, even, which is
that's
what it is, a terrorist state.
Precisely.
It's really the future is for the struggle of the Palestinian, and we hope that this will lead to liberation of not just Palestine, but the Arab world, because it's still under the thumb of the U.S. puppet regimes that are really controlling, and they are really not just authoritarian regimes, but they are really dictatorial and fascist regimes that suppressing their people all across the Arab country. So we hope for an intifada that will extend to the Arab world. What's your feeling towards that?
Well, the Arab Spring, in some cases, unfortunately, turned into even further divisions, and was circumvented and was co-opted in some cases, and that's most unfortunate because it was promising. But I do agree with you, Hanna. The situation in the Arab world continues to be dire, and there are really governments that they say one thing and they act differently. Whether it will be Saudi Arabia or Qatar and so on, that they are also complicit, and they actually, if you recall 2 weeks ago, they came out officially, at least in the case of the Saudis, who are supporting terrorism in Syria. By the way, they came out and they blamed the Palestinians themselves.
That ugly guy at Turkey. Ugly not in the face, but ugly in his behavior, In
his behavior. That is despicable. And so, look, there is no, unfortunately, and we've never seen that. There is no, there's Arab solidarity as far as the street is concerned, but there's never been Arab solidarity as far as governments is concerned. And that goes back to the days of the early struggle against the Zionist movement in the 30s and 40s. Right? We don't have time to hash all that out, but we know what those regimes did during that period of time as far as their cooperation with the Zionist movement is concerned.
Yeah, that's true. And like you said, they established, operational headquarters in Jordan against Syria with training, weapons, plane loads of weapons to so-called these Syrian rebels, while in Palestine they're supporting the enemy of the Arab people, not just the Palestinian people, but the Arab people in general. So, we call it, their position is, we call it in Arabic, nifaq, munafiqeen, which is hypocrite, really, and that's
exactly.
That's what they're doing. So I'm going to give you one final word to our listeners.
The final word is that, the people in Palestine, the children of Gaza need us to speak out, need us to be active, need us to speak truth to power. And I'm energized by all the support that we're getting from a lot of people at the community level, and we need to keep the pressure on all our political parties and not be afraid to tell them exactly what we think, and to point out that in order to support international law, they need to do a lot better than the positions that they are currently taking. And their complicity in murder, war crimes, and genocide will not be forgotten now or during the next election in 2015.
We will remember all those who stood with us and all those who supported the genocide and the war crimes. You are right, Hassan.
Exactly. And in the meantime, please visit the Voters number 4 Gaza for more information on upcoming actions.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks a lot, Hassan, and keep up the good work. And it was a pleasure talking to you.
It was a pleasure talking to you as well. You take care.
Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Okay, salam. Bye-bye.
And that was Hanna Kawas speaking with Hassan Husseini from Ottawa. And with that, we conclude another edition of the Voice of Palestine. Please check out our website, voiceofpalestine.ca, where we have archives of all our shows for over 10 years. Thanks for tuning in. Palestine will be free.